There are quite a few varieties of hydrangeas we can grow in a garden, and to simplify it, there are spring blooming hydrangeas, which include mop heads and lace caps. They sort of have, just giant leaves. They're called big leaf hydrangeas. And then there's also summer blooming hydrangeas, and they sort of fall into the category almost as your tree hydrangeas. Now this here is one of the big leaf hydrangeas that we're looking at, and it comes into bloom in the spring. Now, just to complicate things a little bit more, most of these would only bloom in the spring, but now they've created a whole new group of hydrangeas that bloom in the spring and then bloom again in the summer. So you might want to look for those reblooming hydrangeas, especially if you live in those areas where it gets a little cold or too cold in the winter and it freezes some of the buds. As you look at these spring blooming hydrangeas, all the flowers are at the edge of the plant. And what happens is later in the season, August, September, the flower buds are produced at the tips of all the stems. And then they bloom in the spring. And this is if you have a real cold winter, sometimes they freeze back. The ideal way to prune this type of hydrangea is what we call a thinning process. That's where you come in and remove about 20% of all the stems completely to the ground. So if you had 100 stems, you'd remove 20. If you had 10 stems, you would remove 2. And by pruning it this way, you're always producing nice new long stems that have the ability to flower, as you see here. Here's a great example of a lace cap hydrangea. The flower's a little flatter, and then it sort of has this look to it. And they also bloom a long time, and some actually bloom again and again for you in your gardens. I find that a lot of these hydrangeas in really colder climates do well underneath some sort of tree protection or evergreen protection, and they really help brighten up those shady gardens. And as you see here, they do get pretty big. See, some of these hydrangeas will get 4 or 5 feet in diameter, so definitely don't plant them too close together in your garden. One of my favorite hydrangeas is known as the tree hydrangea. This hydrangea begins blooming in early summer, and it blooms all the way throughout the summer. And this hydrangea can be pruned to any height you'd like. You can keep it shorter, or as you see here, you can let it grow into a 20-foot tree. Pruning on this takes place early in the season, probably early spring, because it blooms on new wood. And one of the varieties that I really like is known as Hydrangea tardiva. Easy to grow, anyone can grow it. The hotter it is, the better this plant grows. There's such a wide variety of hydrangeas. You can get colors that you see here. Now this one's called Glowing Embers, but it is a really, as you see here, bright pink that really brightens up that part of the garden. Now remember, some grow in full sun, or they love environments like you see here, which is considered bright shade. I'm standing next to my favorite hydrangea that you can grow in the garden. It's one of my top 5 favorite plants, and it's Hydrangea Annabelle. Any of us can grow it. And this plant really does well exceptionally in the full sun. So if you have that area in a garden, full sun, this is a plant that will just grow beyond your expectations. This plant blooms on new wood, so you cut it down to the ground every spring to 2 to 3 inches, and you'll see these white flowers turning this olive color. You can then cut these, strip the leaves off of these, and hang them upside down. They'll dry perfectly, so you can use them for your fall and your winter decorations. I'm Mark Viette. Join me next time in the garden.
For more garden tips, go to inthegardenradio.com.